welcome back, Weeos and Weeboos, to the channel Publishing Doge, where today, well, we're kind of doing a patch review, but not really. Well, I'll talk a little bit about the patch, but I'll be pretty quick otherwise, because I want to focus most of this video on these three characters on the screen right here. Brigitte, Lucio, and Wuyang. You'll find the common thread here pretty quickly. That being said, I may as well cover the patch while I'm here, at least in very short, so, well, compared to my usual extremely long-winded patch reviews. So, if you want to go straight to the talk about these three supports, and the journey I've gone on trying to understand Wuyang, then you can use the timestamps to skip ahead. But for now, we'll start by just covering the patch. So, to rapid fire through it, Hazard has had 5% damage reduction removed from his block. He has had a 10-point damage nerf to the slash on Violent Leap. Ramattra has gotten 25 extra armor on Nemesis form. Roadhog has been giga buffed with a double headshot multiplier and a 25% boost to his Take a Breather regeneration. Wrecking Ball lost 20 bullets in his clip, and his minefield now lasts 4 seconds shorter. Genji now has a 10-second cooldown on Deflect instead of 8 seconds, eesh. Hanzo has a smaller hitbox on his Storm Arrows, because before now there was a change they made where they made the hitbox of them larger, and now they're reverting it. Torbjorn's Overload went from 5 to 6 seconds, his DPS of Molten Core went up from 160 to 190 if you stand in the lava. Tracer's had a perk cost reduced by 25%, Widowmaker has had a Grappling Hook go down to 10-second cooldown from 12, Venom Mine now does 125 damage if you take the full poison damage rather than 75, that is a lot. And, of course, the bottom three here. Brigitte gets a buff to Shield Bash, moving it up from 50 to 70 damage. A bug fix to Combat Medic, the perk where landing hits with Flail would give you your heal packs faster. It now no longer works on things like turrets. Lucio now does less damage per shot from 22 to 20, and Wuyang gets a bunch of cooldown nerfs. Rushing Torrent, his movement ability, goes from a 7-second cooldown to an 8-second cooldown. Guardian Wave goes from a 12-second cooldown to a 14-second cooldown, and Healing Amplification on the Wave has been reduced from lasting 4 seconds to 3 seconds. And that's the patch. So I'll go over some of the things I do have something to say about, but I'll try and make this bit quick, because again, I want to focus most of this video on Wuyang and main supports. So, Hazard, overall, I do kind of like this, mostly, but just a small nitpick. I like this as a light nerf to Hazard. I think this is the right way to go about it. I think Hazard is overall healthier than people like to give him credit for, but he is a little overtuned, and I don't mind taking power away from his block, because that's the main thing that people don't like about Hazard, that it feels like you can't do much about him if he just holds block. Obviously, it depends. If you're Anna, you can do a lot about it, but like if you're on most characters, you can't do a lot about it, and he can kind of go wherever he wants. What I would like to see is, instead of reducing the damage of his leap, I would like to see a second change here that says, now, if you get stunned out of block while using it, you lose, I don't know, 20% of the resource. I think they should do the same for Roadhog as well. I think any kind of tank that gets a resource-based damage mitigation ability should have a mechanic where if you are stunned out of it, you get a resource penalty. I think it's kind of stupid that you can be stunned out of block or take a breather with Roadhog or Hazard, and not only do you just get to stand back up and hold it again, but you are literally regenerating resource while you're on the ground waiting to stand back up. It kind of means there's almost no point in stunning them unless you can just burst kill them on the spot before they even get to stand back up, and I feel like that's stupid. You should have counterplay to things, and I think that's the main thing that people don't like about Hazard, is just that his block feels like it doesn't have much counterplay unless you're on the right character. And I think that being stunned out of block actually giving him a penalty to his cooldown, like, not cooldown meter, his resource meter, would actually make it feel like it's something you can interact with a bit more, and it wouldn't even make Hazard feel bad to play, because if you're a good Hazard, you won't have it cancelled. So, yeah, there you go. Anyway, Ramattra, I also want to put my hands up and completely admit, I was wrong. Basically, I expected that they were a little bit light on the Ramattra nerfs. When they moved from 300 armor to 250, I wasn't up in arms about it, because I was never a huge Ramattra hater, but I did agree Ramattra needed to be nerfed, and when I first saw that this was the nerf, this plus the block quote-unquote bug fix, was the nerfs to Ramattra, I was like, that seems generous. I don't know. I feel like that might be a problem. I don't know if Ramattra should be allowed to get off that easy. But turns out, if anything, he got murdered. His win rate was god-awful. He was practically taken out to the barn and shot. He was murdered this meta, so I was completely wrong. I think because he had a period where I feel like he was already pretty strong, and then he received a slew of giga buffs, and only didn't take over the meta because it was like consistently not really in a place to play Rush. and that happened like during the run-up from Season 7 to Season 9, I would say. He was really strong, I feel, but like people weren't playing him just because it wasn't really a rush meta. But I feel like in a vacuum, he was insanely strong during that time, and I was expecting like sometime around Season 9 or 10 he was going to become busted. But then of course the Season 9 changes happened unexpectedly, and they really didn't favour him. And I think that's why it took so long for Ramattra to become meta, since they started really power creeping him, because of the fact that like the Season 9 changes really made him a lot weaker, and they came just when he was probably about to like take over, at least in my opinion. Or it could just be Cope. No, but seriously, anyway, all that being said, I think the period where he was like starting to become strong but wasn't a problem yet was when they gave him 225 armor on Nemesis form, because, friendly reminder, Nemesis form used to be 150. Like, Nemesis form literally has doubled in armor over the years. So anyway, yeah. So I remember 225 is when he started to feel strong but didn't feel OP. So I was thinking 225 would be a good amount of armor to put him to. But I guess in fairness, that was before the Season 9 changes, and lo and behold, even putting him at 250, he still dies too easy and doesn't do enough. So sure enough, it turns out he actually kind of needs that armor, and he's getting a small compensatory buff back to 275. Don't despair, I know you don't like seeing Ramattra buffs, but remember, this guy was actually goddamn unplayable after that first round of nerfs. They did a lot more than I expected they would. So, yeah, he did actually kind of need this. Now, Roadhog, on the other hand, this has been a big talking point. Okay. Roadhog, if you didn't know, at the start of the season, got a D-work, as I'm calling it. They undid his rework, at least mostly. They completely removed Pigpen, they put your right-click shots from Overwatch 1 back into the game. The only thing they kept was the resource meter for Take a Breather, which, to be honest, I would get rid of that too, but whatever. We've got the resource meter for Take a Breather, everything else is back to normal. Okay. So basically, when they first deworked Hog, they seemed to play it quite safe, and keep him on the weak side and see what people do with him. Especially considering his right-click would add in a lot more skill expression to the character that isn't, like, limited by cooldowns. There was potential that he might end up being way stronger than you expect, though I do think they were on purpose keeping a little bit on the weak side, just in case people went crazy on him. And sure enough, he was a little bit weak, so they then hotfixed in some buffs. And I think those buffs were reasonable and put him in a good spot. In fact, due to the fact that the meta had moved to a double Flex DPS meta, especially at the top levels of play, like Overwatch Contender Series, like coordinated play, Roadhog actually saw some play in Overwatch Contender Series, like actual, real, professional games. And just so you know, that is like a once-in-a-blue moon thing. Hog usually never sees play at like the highest levels of play. He is basically just a noob stomper that some specialists can make work at the top ranks, at least on ladder, but usually doesn't see any play in coordinated circumstances. And yet Hog was actually seeing play at top-level competitive, Overwatch Contenders kind of games, mostly because of the fact that there were no main DPS around, and main DPS are one of the main people who can keep Roadhog in check by just shooting at him from a distance where he can't hook them, and consistently pumping damage to him until he dies. But if you've got a Genji Tracer as your DPS, sure, that means you're really fast and aggressive, but how does the Genji Tracer kill a Roadhog? You just don't. You have to avoid them. Which means the Roadhog can go wherever the hell he wants. And if the Roadhog can go over the hell he wants, and people aren't running Ana, then what's to stop the Roadhog from just walking on your backline, hooking your Wuyang, and blowing his head off? Basically nothing. So yes, Roadhog has been seeing some play. Now that was already before this buff, so he didn't need this buff really. But they buffed him anyway. Now, credit where it's due, he was doing poorly on ladder, apparently. Now, all that said, as much as I first recoiled at this balance change, I'm going to say something that might seem a bit crazy. Everyone's pointing at the headshot multiplier going up from 1.5 times to 2 times, and that is an enormous damage buff to Hog. But honestly, I'm going to say something maybe a little crazy. I feel like I might not have minded this change too much if it wasn't also a take a breather buff. I know that might seem innocuous compared to the crazy buff in front of it, but the more I've played with it, I'm kind of okay with the headshot damage perk. Not perk, buff. It might be nice if it was bundled with a small damage nerf. So, like, the total damage potential goes up. You do get more damage on Hog on average, but you really got to land the headshots now. And also, like, it's not literally just going from 1.5 to 2 times. It's 1.5 to 2 times, but then, I don't know, shave off 10% damage total or something. I think something like that might have been good. And then no take a breather buff. I think that would have been good. I think the take a breather buff is what really pushes it over the edge. Now, the reason I'm going to say this is, Roadhog is historically a character that has not taken a lot of skill. However, right-clicks actually do take a decent amount of skill, and especially if you've got to headshot them, it's going to take a decent amount of skill. So, one thing I've noticed is I expected that Roadhog would absolutely take over every lobby I went in the second this mid-season dropped. I'm going to be real with you. I have not seen a lot of Roadhog this mid-season. I have seen some, more than before, but before I was seeing none. And now I'm seeing, like, some. You know, I've seen, like, 4 or 5 hogs. It's like, well, that's actually not a lot, you know? I was expecting way more Roadhogs after this buff, and I haven't seen a lot of them. Now, me playing Roadhog personally, it's been a while since I had my Roadhog phase. I went into my Roadhog phase when he actually lost his one-shot, because I actually always hated him having a one-shot. Even when I played him, I just thought it felt cheap, and it cheapened the value of hook tech and all the interesting things about the character. So I actually preferred playing him when he was bad, and I liked to play him when he was didn't have the one shot. But it's been a while since I had my hug phase, especially because Malga's kind of replaced. Like, if I have to pick the selfish run everyone over tank, I've gotten way better at Malga than I was at Roadhog. So like Malga is now the panic button. Okay, right. If I can't play Winston and I can't play Honest Overwatch and I have to run them over, fine, I'm going Malga. Anyway, sidetrack. Yeah, basically, because of that fact, I don't really think I'm the best Roadhog. It's been a while since I've been in the Roadhog phase. And initially, I felt like this buff should have been crazy, but when I played with it, it almost felt not even different. I think that's just because I'm not that good at Roadhog, or at least a lot of it's washed off now. I'm not really as good as I used to be. But as I played more Hog and sort of started picking it back up, and by the way, I still don't think I really got good with him, but as I played him a little bit more and like got back into the swing of using right click, I started feeling the buffs. Like, I didn't feel them at first. I thought I'd feel them immediately, and I really didn't immediately. He felt basically the same at first. And the longer I played him, I started like, oh wait, I can feel the buffs now. Wait, actually, oh, hang on a minute, I can feel it now. So yeah, I think basically what I'm saying here is I think that Roadhog's win rate was mostly low because of the fact that I genuinely think he takes a lot more skill than he used to now, which is a good thing, and I think people were taking time to adjust. Now, it could just be I'm projecting my own experience onto everyone else, and that's not really what's going on. But it has been a long time since we've had right-click in the game, and I do think the new Roadhog, a lot of it is landing your right-clicks. You've got to land right-clicks to get value on Roadhog. So, yeah. For that reason, I personally think they've been a bit too hasty here, but I get it. I actually kind of like the headshot damage one, just because I think it adds more skill expression to Hog. I just think you can't do that and then also buff his survivability and then not even have any other takeaway. Especially because, like, it's so innocuous, 10 to 12.5 regeneration rate, but, like, that's a 25% boost to your survivability at all times on Hog. Like, imagine if they just gave Hog an extra 150 health one day. Like, that would be a big buff. That's effectively what they've done. In fact, that's worse than what they've done, because you would get way more than 150 health from 25% extra take a breather, not only because it heals you, but because it also provides 50% damage resistance, which will probably block way more than 150 damage. So, if anything, it's generous to compare this to getting 150 extra health, because that would barely do anything compared to what this does. So yeah, long story short, they've kind of made a bit of a demon of Roadhog. That being said, it's a bit hard to assess, because I just haven't seen that many people playing Roadhog, even though I really think he's really strong right now. I think you just kind of have to take some time to adjust to the new Roadhog. That being said, maybe the reason no one's playing Roadhog is because everyone's playing Ball, because Ball has been the meta tank this season and continues to be the meta tank even after these nerfs, which is fair enough. These nerfs are not too bad. I like them still. I think they could go a little bit harsher, but I like them still. They reduced his ammo. I think that was warranted. I don't think he should have ever gone to 100 ammo. I prefer him at 80, even as someone who loves playing Ball. You know what, actually, I shouldn't say even. If you didn't know, I can't speak for everyone, but it seems a lot of the Ball community actually hates it when their character gets buffed, including me. Because almost always, when they buff Wrecking Ball, it's things he doesn't need. And when they nerf him, it's making it even worse when you get countered, so to speak. And so it just feels like it invalidates the point at getting good at the character. If you keep giving us buffs we don't need, that just mean that if you're sloppy, you still get to win anyway. But then you keep giving us, like, you know, nerfs. Well, not even nerfs, but, like, changes that make our character easier to counter, which then makes it so that, like, hey, even if you are good, we can just quadruple counterpick you, and sure, you can beat 1 counter, 2 counters, maybe even 3 counters, but can you beat 5? Now, of course, I can't complain too much. This season we got the brand new perk which provides us a shield when we use adaptive shields, like an actual physical shield that can block things like hack or sleep dart or spears or rocks. And that has had a great effect on Wrecking Ball. We finally have some mild counterplay to CC, and I think it's a big thing that's enabled Wrecking Ball to be so busted in this meta. However, I really feel like, over the years, Wrecking Ball has constantly been getting buffs he didn't even need, and the players of Wrecking Ball didn't even want, just as a sorry for not actually giving you what you want and not giving us any counterplay to CC. And now we finally got what we wanted, counterplay to CC, but we also got 5 million buffs we didn't need. And so as a result, now we're kind of in this position of having to undo all the buffs we gave Wrecking Ball that we never should have given him in the first place, because all he needed was some mild counterplay to CC, and now he's got both of them, when he should only have one of them. The biggest one being, I'm going to be real with you, and I'm saying this as a Wrecking Ball player, as Wrecking Ball is my most played tank. Wrecking Ball does not need that much health. All you are doing is making it so people who are trash at Wrecking Ball can get away with being terrible at the game and still win anyway, as long as they literally aren't completely brain dead or they get counterpicked. I'm going to be very specific here. You know what I want to see from Wrecking Ball? I was going to say more lethality, but honestly, with the current uptime he has, he actually feels more than lethal enough. I'm fine with his level of lethality. In the past, I would have said more lethality, but right now, I'm actually quite happy with how easily he can kill. But what I want to see is I want to see his health get nuked down. I want to see it go down to 600, maybe 650. He can keep his shields, but I want to see his armor get reduced or maybe even completely removed. And what I want to see is for his adaptive shields to actually become important. I want it to be that adaptive shields still gives a ton of overhealth, but only if you're really actually getting those stacks. You can't just roll in, hit adaptive shields whenever, and roll out and know you're never going to die. I know that there is more value to getting more targets with adaptive shields, obviously you get more health, but I feel like for most of his life, adaptive shields has not really felt like an important ability to pay attention to on Wrecking Ball. Like sure, it's a small optimization to hit the button when there's 3 enemies in range rather than 2 or something like that, and then you get a bit of extra health, but I feel like over the years, for the most part, it has not felt all that important to get a big adaptive shields off on Wrecking Ball. I would like to see a version of Wrecking Ball that feels like a glass cannon and feels like they can't tank anything until you get that big fat adaptive shield. And if you get that big fat adaptive shields off, then you feel like you can be really tanky, at least for a small window of time. I want to see cooldowns matter. I want to see it possible to kill Wrecking Ball with burst damage if he's not careful. I want to have a version of Wrecking Ball where I am physically killable without someone having to CC the ever-loving shit out of me. Because the one time I die on Wrecking Ball and I don't go, oh, what the fuck, is when I'm trying to roll out and I think that I've stayed in for the correct amount of time, only to realise just as I'm getting to the corner, I'm still low and the hit scan's still shooting me, and then boom. And obviously it's frustrating, but I know deep down, I miscalculated it. I thought I could be in that fight just a little bit longer. I was on my way out, but now they've still got range on me. I didn't finish the kill. I'm too low, and my exit's too far away. I died for that, and that's my honest mistake. In the current state of the game, I do not remember the last time I died as Wrecking Ball without being CC'd, except for situations where I've been body blocked. I can think of maybe 1 or 2 times I got 5-man body blocked and stuck in a room without even needing to be CC'd because the enemies just body blocked every doorway and I thought I'd be able to build Fireball to get out, but I can't. That's happened once or twice. But other than that, I don't think I have died to anything as Wrecking Ball without getting CC'd in like, oh god, I don't want to say this and be wrong, but maybe like half a year. I genuinely don't know if I have died to anything other than CC or getting body blocked as Wrecking Ball in like half a year. That should really say something about the state of Wrecking Ball. Oh, I suppose, wait, no, I have died in overtime holds, but that's obviously because I would get off point, but it's overtime. I literally have to be on point. Anyway, yeah. So, that's what I think about Wrecking Ball right now. At the end of the day, can't complain about these nerfs. It's nerfs I want. I just also want health nerfs. But I like these nerfs too. They are deserved. This is a weird one. Genji. Okay, so people do not like this nerf, and I get it. I'm going to play a teeny bit of devil's advocate, but I'm not going to go full in on it, because I don't really agree with the decision here of the devs, but I think they're trying something big brain here, and it's just not quite landing. I think they're trying to kill 2 birds with 1 stone with this change, and they just haven't thought it through very much. So basically, Genji became meta recently, not only because it's a double Flex DPS meta, not only because Genji was already just kind of good anyway, but the main thing that pushed him over the edge was his new minor perk, which if you didn't know is if you land a quick melee, it reduces the cooldown of your Swift Strike by 3 seconds. That is way better than it sounds, not only because it reduces the cooldown of Swift Strike to 5 seconds, basically every time, because you're going to triple shuriken and quick melee almost everyone you dash on anyway, but then on top of that, you have the option of double quick meleeing, which isn't great for DPS, but is great for getting your dash back in literally 2 seconds. That allows you to go for stupidly quick engages and exits, and then on top of that, there's even, now in fairness, this is niche, but if you hit multiple people with 1 quick quick melee, it does stack even if you only used one melee. What that means is, obviously this will almost never happen, but I'm just saying theoretically, if you dash into a group of 3 people all standing on top of each other, you quick melee and you swipe your screen so you make sure the quick melee hits all 3 of them, you could quite literally get a 9-second reduction on your 8-second dash and immediately get a dash reset. Literally the millisecond you hit your quick melee. That is insane. So yes, his new minor perk is busted as hell, and it's only a minor perk. Now this is the problem. Because it is fun. It's very fun. It's cool and fun. But it's a problem. So it kind of needs to be nerfed. But it kind of sucks. Because no one wants to be the guy who ruins the party by nerfing the cool, fun mechanic, do they? So, I'm not going to lie, I do think, unfortunately here, they have to grit their teeth and bear it. Now, in fairness, I think this perk would still probably be a little on the strong side at a 2-second reduction, but at least I would think it would be like a normal level of strong, and not like a, this is kind of an actual problem for the game level of strong. So, I would say, you just have to bite the bullet and take it to a 2-second reduction. It would still be a good perk. You just wouldn't be able to pull that dashes in, lands 2 melees, dashes out, literally only 2 seconds of vulnerability, and that's not even counting deflect. Now, why am I talking about this? Because instead of nerfing the new perk, we nerfed deflect, taking the cooldown from 8 to 10 seconds. Now, I mentioned I think they're trying to do some big brain move here, I just don't think it's landing very well. Here's what I think the developers were thinking. I could be giving too much credit here, but we'll see. I think they wanted to deal with 2 problems at once. I think on one hand, they were like, okay, we want to nerf Genji because he's out of hand, and we know he's out of hand because of the new perk, but we also know that people like the new perk, and they won't like it if we nerf it immediately. So how about we indirectly nerf it? We don't actually nerf the new perk, but we do something to make the new perk not as much of a problem. So they looked at deflect and went, okay, right, well, you kind of need deflect to do a strong engage as Genji, and if we make deflect take longer, sure, you can get your dash up more often, but you'll oftentimes not even actually be able to use it, even if you can get it faster, if you won't have your deflect ready for when the fight starts. So, that was their idea, I think. Okay, we don't actually have to reduce the cooldown reduction on Slash with the perk, but we could effectively reduce the effectiveness and the speed of engaging on Genji by making deflect slower. At the same time, I think they were also trying to influence your decision of major perk. Genji has had 2 different major perks that have been similar over the years, although one of them's changed a little bit over the years, over the months, I guess. One of his options is the ability to heal while deflecting. It's not a lot of health, but it is healing just for deflecting that you can apply to yourself anytime you want, and for that reason, it's very powerful and is often basically the auto pick. There are a couple Genji 1 tricks that swear by the extra damage on dash, but for the most part, everyone uses self-heal on deflect. But the other option, as I mentioned, is a damage option, where essentially you get bleed damage over time after landing a slash, and it used to be that it only was if you got an elimination and then slashed someone else. As a result, it was pretty terrible. However, now it's definitely a lot better, and is a much more viable pick, just because of the fact that the condition is no longer that you have to have killed someone to get the extra damage. The condition is now if the person hits half health or lower after taking damage from the initial hit of the slash. That makes it really, really easy to get people within the damage range where they take bleed damage, and if they take bleed damage, it's some extra damage. And obviously you can even combine that with the new minor perk to get those slashes extremely fast and get even more damage. This major perk decision used to be, like, you know, a no-brainer back when it was only on eliminations you got the bonus damage, that it was always deflect, but now it's a bit closer. Even still though, the self-heal on deflect is the one that most people seem to take. And I think they wanted to change that. I think they also wanted to nerf the self-heal on deflect one, but didn't want to do it directly. And it just so happens that if you have less deflect less often, it kind of makes the heal on deflect perk less appealing, while also solving their minor perk issue. So ultimately put this all together, and is this a good idea? I mean, it's one of those ideas I admire the cleverness of, but I don't really think is working. The main reason why just simply being, Genji just feels weird with 10-second deflect. I'm not even saying he's bad right now, obviously he's worse, noticeably so, but before he was like, kind of an auto pick. So right now, he's not even bad, I would say he's still pretty strong, but he's just like, not like broken or anything. But like I say, it just feels wrong playing Genji with 10-second deflect. You feel that strangling of the pace. You feel like you should be able to do more, but you just can't. And then weirder still, sometimes you can anyway, because of the fact you can get your dashes back so fast. Sometimes you can go for an engage with no deflect, just by dash in, double melee, dash out. Sometimes you're in there for such little time that it doesn't matter you don't have deflect, you can just get in and get out, and it's fine. And hey, you might even get a kill on the way. I suppose it's not bad that that encourages aggression from Genji, but at the same time, it just feels like it's so risky that you can only go for those kind of risks in certain situations, and in most situations, you just have to sit back and play painfully slow. So yeah, I'll at least give credit and admire the thought behind this change, but I think I have to join the choir of everyone else in saying, yeah, I don't know about this one. Not really got any comments on the Hanzo change, to be honest. Torbjorn, I'll make this quick. I think the overload one would have been huge if increasing the duration also made it so that the time you wait in between the cooldown ending and getting it back was shorter, but that's not how this works. This is one of those cooldowns where it doesn't go on cooldown until the ability is out of use. So for that reason, I don't think this is a huge buff. Not that it should be. I mean, you don't really want to make Torb too strong. Basically, anytime they buff Torb, it's not even because they want to buff Torb, it's because they want to nerf Tracer, but they don't actually want to directly nerf her. Which, by the way, that's basically that's like a one-to-one correlation. If Torb is getting buffed, it's almost always because they're scared of Tracer. So yeah. Though I will say I like his ult buff. I do think Molten Core needed this. I think we've seen already from the buff to Dragon Strike that ultimates like that, which are technically, in theory, easy to escape, but can do a lot of damage if you can't escape them, are really, really helped. Like, they haven't aged well, but they are really, really helped just by dealing damage faster. It's a simple thing, but it's really effective just making them kill faster. As people get better at the game. And I do think Molten Core was lacking in that area. So yeah, I think if you want to catch people and use this more generally, you do need to increase the DPS, and I think this is a reasonable amount to increase it by. I like it. Tracer having a perk cost increase by 25%. This is a very reasonable nerf. Tracer right now is really, really, really strong. The fact that Ball is taking over is only making her stronger. I still will die with this on my tombstone. I still personally believe, and has always believed, that the single strongest combination of two characters in the entire game is Tracer and Ball. I don't know if you will ever be able to convince me otherwise. I don't think anything beats Tracer Ball. I literally think nothing in the game beats Tracer Ball if you play it well. So, yeah. It's no surprise Tracer needs to be kept in check, but they really don't want to do the same thing they've been doing for years and go back between 6 damage per bullet and 5.5 damage per bullet on pulse pistols like they've been doing forever. So it looks like right now they're experimenting with this version of Tracer that does have 6 damage per bullet, but she has more spread, which means less range. She has more burst damage to worry about, so she can die more easily and suddenly, and of course her perks take longer to get now, as well as having to worry about a stronger Torbjorn. Widowmaker buffs, you hate to see it, but in fairness, she kind of needs it. I hate saying that, because I despise Widowmaker. I am the *1 Widowmaker hater, but, like, at the end of the day, I also, I have a soul, I have integrity. I will look at Widowmaker right now and I'll go, I f***ing hate you, but also, I will fully admit, I think your character's useless in the current state of the game, and you know what? You probably need at least something. Here you go. Have a faster grapple. To be fair, I like giving her movement. Maybe not so much that she can dodge a dive, but we're not at that point yet, so as long as we don't hit the point where this cooldown gets so low that you basically never can be dove, which I don't think we're really in that territory yet, but, you know, just saying, I wouldn't push this much further. That would be the only way I'd see this as an issue. And the damage on Venom Mine might be a little bit annoying to deal with, but I think it's fair. Venom Mine is one of the worst abilities in the game, and I feel like increasing the damage is more than fair enough. This will make it actually a threat to Genjis and Tracers trying to dive her, flanking around. If they actually get hit by the Venom Mine, they genuinely lose like a massive chunk of their health and can't even go for the engage. So, big, big buff. I think already 75 was a buff from what it was before. I think there was like a time where it was only like 50 or something. So, it's really gone up a lot over the years, which I like, actually. Right. So, that's the patch, other than these last 3, which is the big talk here. Right. I want to do a little talk about Wuyang, but it is going to involve some talk about Brig and Lucio. We are going to start by talking about main supports, which I've talked about before, but unfortunately I feel like I'll have to re-explain this every video, because I don't want that guy in the comments who completely doesn't understand what main support means getting the wrong idea. So, just so you know, main support, at least in the way it's used in this video and the way it's used in pro play, is nothing to do with the healing output of the support. Main and flex supports are more to do with playstyles and skill sets. Now, I say that and I make it sound all big brain. I will also fully acknowledge that the way that main support and flex support is classified is a little bit stupid. But I also think it is important to recognise I'll explain what I mean. Long story short, main supports are supposed to be supports that have very unique skill sets, and those skills don't necessarily easily transfer over to the other supports in the roster. Whereas flex supports are called flex supports because of the fact that while obviously every character has certain skill sets that are unique to them, for the most part, most of the skills you need to be good at those characters transfer easily over to other supports. The general rule of thumb that a lot of people like to use is if your character is heavily aim-based as a support, you're probably a flex support, and if it's not, then you're probably a main support. Now, that's obviously just a heuristic, not a hard rule, because there are plenty of main supports that do take aim, and plenty of flex supports that don't really take the most aim. For example, Moira is a flex support, and Wuyang is being considered a main support at the moment, despite the fact that Wuyang clearly takes more aim than Moira. As I say, it's a mess. Where the term really came from was back in the day, you basically had to run a Lucio on your team or you were throwing. And if you were a professional team, it only made sense to have one support whose literal job it is to play Lucio, the main support, and one support that was able to flex over to multiple different supports to play whatever you needed to run with the Lucio. Then eventually when Brig was added to the game, we had another main support that was actually good to use aside from Lucio. So now it could be Brig or Lucio. And now we have Wuyang. Now, if you're wondering, are there any other main supports? Is it just Brig, Lucio, Wuyang? The answer is kind of, but kind of not. There are two other main supports, but they're kind of irrelevant when it comes to the highest levels of play. That's because they are Lifeweaver and Mercy. Lifeweaver at least has seen some competitive play, though mostly as a niche surprise counterpick or a cheese comp. And Mercy, I don't know, I'm not like a scholar of the history of esports of Overwatch, but hasn't it been like a decade since Mercy has seen any real competitive play and any success? Mercy just does not exist at that level of play practically. So for that reason, even though there are other main supports, for the most part, when people are talking about main supports, they've been talking about Lucio and Brig. And now, Wuyang. Even then, Wuyang's in a bit of a weird spot. When he first dropped, it was a little bit ambiguous if this guy was going to be a main support or a flex support. When the leaks came out, and we hadn't yet seen any gameplay of him, but we heard the description of his kit, I was putting my money on main support. But when we actually got the chance to get our hands on him, I was a little bit unsure. He was very aim-based, and he really didn't do a whole lot of the things that the main support usually does. That being said, a lot of other parts of his kit really felt main support-ish, so I felt a lot less confident. That being said, a lot of time has passed now, and a lot of professional teams are running Wuyang as a main support alongside a flex support. So, why did I think that Wuyang was going to be a main support, and why did he end up being a main support? Because, while I fully acknowledge this definition of main support is messy as hell, I want to propose a different way of looking at it, and a way I'm probably going to look at it in this video. I can think of a definition of main support that is way simpler to understand, however it excludes Lifeweaver and Mercy. That's the only problem. The reason, though, that I'm still going to use this definition anyway is because when it comes to the highest levels of play, for the most part, Lifeweaver and Mercy are useless as main supports anyway. The only relevant main supports all have one thing in common, and that one thing is something remarkably simple for how messy this discussion gets usually. All three of these characters have access to boops. I know this seems really simple, but the idea that you are a backliner that can heal, but you can also boop, makes you really good at protecting people, especially your other support. On top of that, it really positions you to create openings to allow others to playmake, and makes you more of a shot caller if you're capable of both healing and booping. Any way to control the positions of people as well is a bonus. Lucio can obviously do this through speed, and in fairness to Lifeweaver, he can do it through life grip, even if it's not exactly the most free-flowing and comfortable way to do it. Mercy is the only one who completely skirts the definition, unless you want to count Res as a teleport from the spawn room to the fight, which it kind of is, but for the most part, yeah, Mercy's the one that breaks the rules, but again, Mercy's basically not even on the map when it comes to main supports. So for the sake of this video, basically, that's what I'm getting at. The main support, sure there's more to it than this, but I mostly want to boil it down to the main support is a support that acts kind of like a bodyguard. They do a little bit of aggression and like playmaking and all that, especially on Lucio, that's obviously a more aggressive main support, but the main thing that we're looking at is that they have the tools to not just heal people, but get people away from threats. Okay, all that said, let me talk about Wuyang. If you didn't know, I made a video talking about what I thought about Wuyang from the playtest, and I said I was really disappointed with him. Now, I wasn't too mad, because I was always terrified whenever there's a new support added to Overwatch, it was going to be another character that just makes the game worse. I hate to say that, because when Overwatch makes a good support, they make a damn good support, but I feel like they've had way more misses than hits. I feel like most of the time when they add a new support to the game, they add someone to the game that I think actively makes it more infuriating and grating to play and less skill rewarding. I hate to say that, but it's true. I'm gonna be honest, since Ana, who obviously I think Ana's pretty well made, I feel like basically every support added to the game since launch has been like that, and I feel like Juno has been the only exception. Brig eventually got to a good spot. I think Brig is in a good spot now, but obviously we don't have to talk about launch Brig. I think that Overwatch just has a terrible track record with supports, quite frankly. Again, when they have a good one, they really knock it out of the park. When they make a good support, it is genuinely usually some of the healthiest, most fun character design they ever make. But most of them are kinda stinkers. So the fact that Wuyang wasn't a stinker, he doesn't do anything that actively makes the game worse, I was appreciative of, but I also felt like he was kind of a nothing burger. Like, yes, I know he can steer his shots, but like, how much does that actually change the game? Do you really want to run a main support that has almost no unique utility? Like, when people talk about Wuyang being impressive, they don't talk about his utility, his ability to protect people, or his ability to enable plays that no one else could make. They talk about him doing a lot of damage and healing. But the thing with that is, you can do a lot of damage and healing on Moira, and yet Moira is considered a noob stomper character that rarely sees play. Well, you know, in recent years she's been a bit better at top ranks, but for the most part, rarely still sees much play in top ranks. For the most part, when a support does nothing but pad damage and healing stats, they're not actually that good, especially if their mobility isn't very good. And while Wuyang's mobility isn't bad, when you compare it to Lucio as an alternative, who would also provide speed boosts, still be able to do a hell of a lot of damage, and mostly just sacrifice a bit of healing, but for the ability to play way more aggressively, I feel like I was looking at Wuyang and thinking, he looks lacking. Now, in fairness, I'm still standing by that I feel like I was correct about the playtest version of Wuyang we saw before the launch of Season 18. But I will say I was wrong on something else. The amount of buffs I suggested in my initial video on Wuyang probably would have been too much, I will admit. Because when I first read the buffs he got at the start of the season, I thought, oh, they're playing a bit safe. Honestly, these buffs aren't that crazy. Now, in fairness, I wasn't mad, because I thought, yeah, it's probably enough. He'll probably be playable. But I was looking at those buffs thinking, damn, you know, maybe Wuyang could use some help. That's not a lot. Now, in fairness, when I actually sat down and played with these buffs, I was like, okay, never mind, this is a lot more than I thought. Like, I didn't think this would change much, but now I'm actually sitting here playing with the faster rushing torrent, now I'm playing with the increased jump height, now that I'm playing with the more consistent wave and all that, now that I'm playing with the faster ultimate, I can feel it. I can feel that I'm doing a lot more on Wuyang, and he feels like a much better character. Even still, though, I didn't think much of him. I did not really think he was all that great, to be honest. I didn't think he was bad. I think he was a fine pick. I think, if anything, he's probably a little bit stronger than average. But, you know, we kind of used to characters being very strong on release. And Wuyang, to me, just felt, you know, he's strong. He's okay, you know. I had my couple pop-off moments on him. Probably my greatest achievement is there was a time I got a kill on someone hiding on the health pack near spawn on Lijiang Tower while I was standing on point with one of the craziest bends ever. That was pretty cool. But other than a couple, like, you know, kills I got, like, in some really ridiculous situations where it's like, oh my god, you know, like, oh wow, I actually get the kill from there. Which, of course, happen, but they're not, like, consistent. Other than things like that, Wuyang didn't really do anything that impressed me. Now, of course, I've still seen tons of people saying he's insanely busted, he's super overpowered. And I've kind of tuned it out, just because, like, I mean, I'm used to this. I feel like we do this literally every time a new hero comes out. Guys, I know I said this before, but, like, do you remember when Alari came out? Do you remember how long people said Alari was the most busted character in the game? When's the last time you saw an Alari player? No, actually, when have you seen an Alari player? And follow-up question, have you seen an Alari player that actually wins their goddamn games? Alari seems to be like a throw pick nowadays, and she barely even ever got nerfed. In fact, I'm pretty sure she received more buffs than nerfs. I haven't double-checked that, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure over her lifetime she's received more buffs than nerfs, and yet right now, she is not doing good. She is terrible right now. Some people even think she's a throw pick. I'm almost bordering on that opinion. And yet, on Alari's release, oh my god, she's so OP, she's so OP, oh my god. And in fairness, you might say, oh yeah, well, Season 6 was Alari BAP meta, but I feel like that was BAP carrying Alari more than anything else. It just makes sense to run another hit scan support if you're going to run BAP to just magnify the hit scan damage. But I don't really think that was Alari being super strong. I think that was mostly BAP being super strong, because he was already overtuned as hell at the time, and Alari just so happened to work really well with BAP. Especially considering that, yeah, the second Season 7 hit, Alari fell off a cliff and basically never recovered. Like, again, I don't believe Alari has ever been good since Season 6. She had one season when she first came out where she was good. And people are still saying she was broken in Season 7, by the way. There were still people for seasons afterwards saying Alari is so busted and complaining about how much damage she does. And she's awful. So I'm not gonna lie, I feel like I've been conditioned. I feel like it's worse on supports too. I feel like I have been conditioned so heavily to whenever I hear a new Overwatch character come out, and I'm hearing all these people saying, they're so busted, and the reasons they give are just, oh, they deal so much damage. Oh, it's insane they can do that. But it's not actually like, any explanation of what about that is so strong, or why that's so exceptional. That always kind of trips alarm bells for me. I always think, okay, this is all smoke. And to be fair, that is what I thought about Wuyang. I felt like everyone's just screaming about him because he's the new character, and everyone always does this. And everyone always does the excuse if you try and tell them that they're just overhyping it of, oh, you don't understand, when we get good at the character, maybe they're not OP now, but wait until we get good at the character. Any day now, we'll get good at the character. Any day now, all these years that Alari's been out, no one's actually gotten good at her. Don't you worry, guys. Eventually, someone's actually going to get good at Alari, and trust me, she's sleeper broken. I'm not saying there's nothing to the idea that characters will perform better as people get good at them. I was already kind of making that argument for the current state of Roadhog right now, but I do feel like people like to throw it out there as a nebulous, things not matching what I'm seeing can just be explained away by this. So I'm wary of the way that people use it to justify why a character is broken. So all that said, for all those reasons, I was pretty stubborn. I really believed, even after the buffs, Wuyang is fine, but come on guys, we're overblowing it. He is not that good. Now, in fairness, his win rate has been pretty high. Not, monstrously high, but pretty damn high in ranked recently. As well as that, of course, he's seen plenty of play at top-level play. Now, don't get me wrong, I feel like a lot of people will try and paint the picture that every team is running Wuyang, and I think that's far from true. In fact, I'm going to be real with you, while I do think there are many strong Wuyang backlines, a lot of people are talking about Wuyang Kiri, I actually feel like the strongest backline in the game right now is still Lucio Kiri. I don't think it's Wuyang Kiri. I don't think Wuyang Kiri is bad. I think it's fine. I just think Lucio Kiri is better in most situations. And again, a lot of that comes down to the utility. Do you want speed or do you want water balloons? And I'm not gonna lie, I think I want speed. Obviously, it will depend somewhat on the comp and the map and things like that, but generally speaking, I feel like constantly having more movement speed for everyone on your team is going to have a lot more impact than getting a few poke pot shots here and there on a character that isn't as fast and can't grant his teammates speed. But I must admit, I didn't want to just be lying to myself. I didn't want to be anti-intellectual. I didn't want to just say, oh, those stats are fake and gay. I did look at his win rate, and while I do feel like people go a little crazy, again, it's high, but it's not that high, but I did look at his win rate and go, okay, that is higher than I thought. I did not think Wuyang would be winning that many games. And again, just to be clear, it's not like I've been doing terrible on him. I had some really rough games during the playtest, as I usually do. My god, those playtests are usually brutal for trying to play with any kind of team. But certainly after the playtest, I was able to play Wuyang a lot more seriously, and I feel like I'm decent at him. Obviously, I don't think he's a main for me, because I've never been a big aim guy, but I am better with projectiles and prediction when it comes to aim over hit scans and just clicking head, and Wuyang definitely leans more into that aspect. But I just wasn't feeling this power, and I don't know where this win rate was coming from. And whenever I looked up any kind of videos talking about Wuyang, it seemed like they always just justify it with, oh, he does so much damage, and I've just never bought it. Yes, I get it, he does do big damage, but isn't that just stat padding? And I know that doesn't hand-wave everything away, but let's engage with this seriously. Lifeweaver does a lot of healing. Lifeweaver consistently heals more health per 10 minutes than literally every other character in the game as a statistical fact. Despite that fact, Lifeweaver is not actually that good at healing. Okay, I tell a lie. He's fine at healing, but there are characters that are better at healing, at least the kind of healing you want. Ana is better at healing. If you are a Genji on an angle and you are low health and you want to win this duel versus a Tracer and you have LOS to your Ana, an Ana would be better to have than a Lifeweaver. The Ana provides the health instantaneously, with no travel time, provides more health per shot, and can shoot more shots. The only reason why the Ana doesn't get more heals per 10 minutes than the Lifeweaver on average is because the Ana has other things to do. She has sleeps to land, she has antis to land, she has nano boosts to administer, and she has damage to do. She isn't just pumping heals all the time. On top of that, it's a little bit hard to pump heals. She needs LOS to you, she needs an angle, she needs to not be under attack herself, and she needs to be able to hit her shots. Meanwhile, Lifeweaver doesn't have to do any of that. Lifeweaver isn't actually that good at healing, as in keeping people alive in a fight. He's not bad at it, but he's not the best. but he gets the most healing per 10 minutes because he has almost nothing to do but heal most of the time, at least the way a lot of people play Lifeweaver. Though side tangent, you should probably aim to DPS a bit more on Lifeweaver. But that, combined with the fact that his heals are much easier to land, they auto-aim, and there's not really any cost to them, there's not anything else for you to really be worrying about, you just pump heals the whole game, and so even if you're not actually that good at saving people's lives, you are still pumping heals just passively by existing. And so by the end of the game, you get a big healing number. Sometimes even after not really saving many people's lives, but you get a big healing number. In the end of the day, a lot of that healing does not actually translate to much in-game impact. But you did that healing, I guess. Now, you can probably see where this is going. I felt the same about Wuyang. Sure, he does a lot of damage, but how often does that convert to a kill? Well, in some games that converts to a kill very easily, especially if you've got reliable teammates that are constantly diving the backline and finishing off the people you get low. But you're kind of waiting for a dream scenario there. You're not going to get the goated Genji Tracer duo in every single game. And so, when you have a game where your DPS lock Widow Torb on ranked ladder, how are you going to get kills on Wuyang? Yes, you're going to be able to land shots, but almost everyone you land a shot on will immediately dive to cover. And yes, you can bend around cover, but you can't see where they are. And there's a decent chance you have no idea which direction they ran once they go behind cover. So unless they're caught in a very cramped area where you can reasonably predict the only few ways they could move, in most cases, you don't usually get a follow-up shot after the first one if you land your first bubble. The second you land one water balloon, they run away, and you don't know where they are anymore, and you can't land the second one, especially if you're doing this from far away, which you will be most of the time. You are still doing damage, I'm not saying you're doing nothing, of course damage does things, but you're doing a lot of damage and not actually having a lot of direct impact unless your team does something. Which again, if they do something, great, I can see that being powerful. But again, let's say you're playing solo queue ranked ladder, I was trying to see, okay, how do you make that work on Wuyang? Surely you keep getting people to 1, but they keep crawling away, and you want to chase them, but you're a support, and you would have to use your cooldowns to get in there, and if you did that, you'd be stranded in the enemy backline, and you would get eaten alive, and you would get flamed. If you can't trust your DPS to follow up, I was thinking you wouldn't really get a lot out of Wuyang, and so I was seeing him as a character that makes you win harder when you're already winning, and lose harder when you're already losing. Especially considering during the playtest, he was absolute food to be eaten by any flanker. He was easy to take out. Nowadays, he's not so easy. The buffs definitely helped him a lot. He's still a little bit more squishy and vulnerable than most of the supports, but still, he is better at defending himself. I definitely feel it's a lot more skill-based now, that you have a chance to fight back, but you've got to hit your shots, you've got to be smart about it, you've got to out-rotate them, and you've got to make the best use of your cooldowns possible. So yeah, I basically saw Wuyang as the damage equivalent to Lifeweaver. Doing lots of damage, because yes, you are hitting lots of shots. What else are you supposed to do? It's the whole gimmick of your character. Bend those balls, hit those shots, even in situations where it's a bit hard to get an angle, doesn't matter. You can compensate for cover or small deviations in movement with a little bit of bending. And you can make sure that there's never a position where you can't be dealing damage. Sure, you're not dealing damage super fast. Sure, you're not getting a whole lot of kills. But hey, you're dealing damage, and that means you're farming ult charge, and that means the scoreboard looks good. But are you actually having a lot of impact? And I really thought the answer to that was going to be no, not really. But in fairness, maybe the problem here is that I've seen damage and healing as equal. Well, I say equal. I obviously know in the back of my head, damage is more valuable. Beyond the fact that at the start of Overwatch 2, they added a 50% penalty to the amount of ultimate charge you gain from healing, so that you get more from dealing damage, meaning that farming damage will charge your ult faster than farming healing, which wasn't the case in Overwatch 1, and that was a real problem back in the day. Obviously, you're going to get more ultimates then off of stat padding with damage rather than healing, and more ultimates means more chances to make a play that actually does something. But that was really all I was thinking. I really didn't think you would get much out of the consistent but slow trickle of damage that Wuyang provides. But I kept seeing these stats that suggest that maybe it is doing something. And in fairness, again, I win a decent amount of my games on Wuyang now I've got the hang of him. I just don't really feel like I've done a whole lot in those games. I don't feel like I've done bad, but I just kind of feel like I showed up, I did my job, and now the game is over. I rarely get the sense on Wuyang that I've done something that's really changed the course of the game. I get the sense I've done good things that helped, and I get that sense very frequently, but I rarely get that sense that, oh, I just made that play, and that has completely won us the entire game off that single team fight. And I get moments like that on a lot of other supports. I get moments like that on Brig or Anna or Lucio. I wasn't really getting that on Wuyang. Ultimately, I was just looking at this character and going, listen, I don't think he's bad. But like, most main supports are really good for their utility. Obviously, Lucio is packed with utility, and while Brigitte at first might not seem to have quite as much, the protection she provides I think should count as a utility, and if you do count it as one, that's a pretty big one. Meanwhile, Wuyang just provides stats to pad the scoreboard with, it seemed. So I just looked at him very skeptically and thought, okay, I'm not saying you're a bad character, but on what planet do I want you more than a Brig or a Lucio? In fairness, I should probably throw in right now that I think that Lucio, especially before this nerf, obviously maybe not so much after this nerf, but even still I don't think he's bad after this nerf, but I think Lucio was extremely strong recently. I'm not saying that I'm glad he got nerfed, because I do think Lucio is extremely fun and healthy, so I like it when he's strong, but in fairness, he was probably a little overtuned recently. I really think that Lucio is consistently, how do I put this? I feel wrong saying consistently slept on, because people know he's good, but I feel like people don't talk about it if Lucio is good, you know? Because they just expect Lucio's going to be good. I think Lucio has genuinely been really notably good recently, though. I think he has been a top support for the past few months. Brig, on the other hand, has been struggling a bit more, but I don't think it's because Brig is bad, though to be fair, I'll admit, I have bias here. My most played supports are Brig and Ana, and I love them both. So I'll admit openly, unless Brig is literally in the dumpster unplayable, I basically always believe in Brig. I'll admit. But hear me out. I really think that Brig recently has been strong in a vacuum. The problem has just been finding someone to run her with. In fact, I think this is almost always why Brig falls out of favour, rather than her actually being weak. I think it's very rare that Brig is genuinely weak. I feel like a lot of the times, if you're not seeing Brig, it's just because there's no one to run her with. You typically run Brig with Ana in a dive comp, or Juno in a rush comp. You also used to run Brig with Zen in the old days with dive and poke comps, but I'm not sure how much you can do that in Overwatch 2, because of course you don't have stun on Shield Bash anymore. Though it's still a comp I like playing personally in quick play, and I think is quite fun, relatively strong, even if it's not always optimal anymore. So yeah, Zen has been on the map once or twice, but for the most part he spends most of the time kind of out of the meta. Just because usually there are dive characters around that can eat him up a little too easy if he ever becomes too good. Ana is in and out, and is usually the reason Brig is good if she is good, but I would say right now she's in a middling spot. She's not a bad pick, but she's not exactly defining the meta in any way. She's only really seeing a lot of play, as far as I can see, on the really dive-oriented maps where you're always going to run Ana Brig, like Watchpoint Gibraltar. As for Juno, she's kind of disappeared off the face of the earth. Lucio's not only massively outclassing her, but on top of that, she's really vulnerable to the kind of DPS that are running the game right now. The Reapers, the Genjis, the Tracers, the Balls even, they're way too fast for her to escape, and she has no defensive tools to stop herself getting eaten alive by them. She's basically always playing in shark-infested waters, and the sharks are faster than her, and she doesn't have any shields or self-heal, so like, she's kind of just there to get eaten. A Brig can help with that, but only so much. So yeah, basically I think Brig is still technically good even right at this moment as I am speaking. The problem is that you're not seeing a lot of Ana. You're seeing some, but not a lot. You're not really seeing much Zen, and you're not really seeing much Juno. And those are the things you want to run with Brig. What you are seeing a hell of a lot of is Kiriko. That new perk made her busted, and I already think Kiriko is basically always busted, it's just a matter of how well you can abuse her. And of course, Kiriko is very good with Lucio, and as we're discovering now, pretty good with Wuyang. But even right now, I think Brig, in a vacuum, is still a strong character. It's just a question of sitting back and waiting until we get another meta where any of those three important characters to pair with Brig is actually relevant. And as soon as that happens, I think Brig shoots way back up to the rank of top support. Lucio and Brig have a lot of attractive qualities to them, especially now that Brig just got this huge buff, this 50 to 70 damage buff on a shield bash. That is a big deal. Considering that Lucio and Wuyang are both getting nerfed here, that's even more reason to believe in Brig in the near future. And considering that I already think that Lucio was insanely good before this nerf, obviously this nerf holds him back, but as I say, I still think he's going to be relevant post this nerf. So when you take that into account, I just look at Brig and Lucio and I'm just like, in what world are you picking Wuyang over these two? Unless there was some kind of character that you really needed to run Wuyang with, that you couldn't run Lucio or Brig with, but we haven't really seen that. Now, I will leave room for the chance that we just haven't discovered it yet. There are a lot of weird and wacky combos you can try with Wuyang, and we haven't seen all of them tried out extensively. It could turn out that some character that doesn't usually get run with either Brig or Lucio is actually good with Wuyang, and that would certainly turn my head. For example, Alari isn't good with Lucio, and usually isn't that good with Brig either. She's usually only run in double flex comps, almost always with BAP, like I say. So hey, if it turned out that Wuyang Alari was secretly the source, you know, hey, I would actually kind of turn my head there. I'd be like, oh damn, wait, Wuyang enables a character we've never really seen pop off. That's important. But I don't see any character that Wuyang enables that Lucio doesn't enable better. With all that being said, so far I've been explaining why I was pretty stubborn on the idea that, yes, Wuyang is fine, but I really think people are overblowing how good he is. But the reason I'm making this video is because I want to explain how I finally come to the conclusion that I think I see it. I think I see why Wuyang's been doing so good, and I think it's way sneakier than everyone gives it credit for. Like, I'll put my hands up and say, okay, fine, I finally figured it out, I was wrong, but I will also counter and say, I did not hear a single one of you guys say this is why Wuyang is good. I think it comes down to two things. I think, first of all, if you get hit by a bubble, it really stops your ability to engage in a dive before it even begins. Which is something I was actually already aware of, but I thought, I mean, you gotta hit the right target at the right time. Oftentimes those targets are gonna use cover, and you can sometimes use bending balls to, like, you know, counter that before it happens, but not always. It depends on the circumstances. Sometimes you have no information where they are. This just seems too inconsistent. Like, sometimes you can do that, and sometimes you can't. And when you can do it, it's great, but, like, you know, I wasn't sure if just sometimes you can deny a dive for a few seconds and slow their pace was really going to be enough to sell the character. Especially when they've got such big boots to fill. But to be fair, I think I need to remember the argument I made earlier, but this time from the opposite angle. Earlier, I was talking about how you can add up to a lot of healing or damage on a character that doesn't actually have a high heals per second or damage per second by just making it so that they can do it all the time at no cost. There are plenty of characters that can kind of stop a dive before it happens in a similar way to Wuyang, using cooldowns. The difference is, Wuyang does it with his primary fire. That ain't a cooldown. That means he can do it whenever he wants, with basically no penalty. Every single time you hit an orb, even if you don't get a kill, especially if it's on someone who's positioned to dive someone else, you are slowing the pace of the enemies indirectly, and they can't really do anything about it, and you didn't spend any resources to do that. When you use Whip Shot or Boop to knock enemies back and protect people and slow the pace of their engage, it is helpful, but there's a push and there's a pull. You lose resources to counteract their aggression, and while you do slow down the pace of the fight, you also limit your own potential for aggression. If you use a boop to protect your backline or slow an enemy's engage, you then can't use the boop to knock someone off the map or split them from their supports. If you use a shield bash to force the Tracer's recall who's diving your Ana as Brig, then sure, that's maybe the right play, but it does leave you in a situation if later you find an enemy on 1 HP trying to crawl away from you, you won't be able to shield bash to chase them and catch the kill. But with Wuyang, if you hit the orb before someone even gets to engage, slow the pace of their engage, you not only slow them down, but then you also can just fling another orb. And don't get me wrong, are you going to hit the second orb? Again, probably not, they'll probably just run back and out of the range of you. But that means they're giving up space. And again, you're not only preventing an engage now, you're also getting space, and you didn't use anything. And I think that's actually the big thing, space. I think one thing that really hid what was good about Wuyang is I've been having some really weird games in Season 18. I don't know, the skill-based matchmaking seems all over the place. I'm not even complaining too much because I've had plenty of games that have been really good and plenty of games that have been really bad. It has been an extreme mixed bag, but like overall probably averages out to okay games. But basically what I'm saying is, in a lot of these games, it's kind of a mess, and so for that reason, space creation and denial has been deeply strange. There have been some matches where I'm able to walk wherever the hell I want on my own as a support, and no one punishes me for my positioning no matter how stupid it is, and then other matches where we can't even get out the spawn doors when we really should be able to run them over. And obviously, that has been a little bit weird and a bit frustrating to get used to, and trying to understand what's good about a character like this is difficult when the environment you're playing in is an environment like that. I think that kind of masked the power of Wuyang, because I've had a lot of games on Wuyang where I have had a stupid amount of space. I've kind of just been able to walk wherever the hell I want. And all the time, I'm not really thinking, wow, Wuyang's so strong, I've got all this space. I've been thinking, wow, the enemies are actually just letting me have this space. Because a lot of people don't even bother to contest me. And to be quite frank, if they got the jump on me, they probably could kill me. They could probably take the space. But they just don't even try. And while I definitely think part of that is that these games were deeply weird, and there was a lot of questionable plays going around, I also think part of that might just be the sort of invisible effect of all the dives I'm denying before they even happen. Eventually it seems like people are just conditioned to not even try to dive me, because every time they try to, they take damage before they can even begin. And while that doesn't mean they die, if they actually went for the dive, they probably would die. And of course, you don't make any space by sitting around the corner constantly waiting to be healed and never actually making a play. The other thing that's also quite sneaky is something I guess people technically said, but I want to be a bit more specific than what others have said. People have said that Wuyang's ultimate is broken. And I'm not gonna lie, I have been really torn on that take. On one hand, I completely agree, and on the other hand, I completely disagree. Let me explain. I feel like I have not had a moment where Wuyang has felt huge. I have not had a moment where I've used Wuyang and feel like that literally decided the whole game right there. That was enormous. However, I have felt like Wuyang is extremely consistent, and I appreciate that. I feel like I have never had an ultimate like Wuyang's where it feels like no matter how I use it, there's always a way I can get value off of it. It's very rare that I ever have a Wuyang that doesn't at least hit someone or save someone, and the few times I do, I immediately feel really stupid, because I know how easy it is to get value off of this ult. At least something. That's the only thing though. I hesitated to agree with everyone else calling the ult broken at first, because I thought to myself, I don't know, how often do I get a kill off of it? I don't know, pretty often, but usually it's like one kill. But then I have to think about what I mean by get a kill off of it, because I only get like one kill off of it most of the time if you're talking the person that they run on and then knock down with the explosion. But not only does Wuyang deny a lot of space creation from people who want to dive you, using his water balls without having to use any resources at all, meaning he can just do it all the time whenever he wants. So even if it is only a small advantage, it's a small advantage you're constantly getting just for existing at no cost to your team. But then on top of that, you have an ultimate that makes a ton of space. This kind of was the moment where it all clicked for me. The fact that Wuyang not only provides such a massive threat, not only permits someone to play so aggressively, but also adds an explosion that the enemies want to avoid onto them that CCs them, means that sure, it doesn't do a lot of damage, means that sure, the stun doesn't last super long for an ultimate, so you don't always get a kill off of it, but you know what you get off of it literally every time you use it, unless you're like actually throwing. You get a shit ton of space. The amount of times I Wuyang someone, and before we know it, 10 seconds later, our entire enemy team is at the enemy spawn doors, camping them, is insane. And I'll tell you, sometimes we make it to the spawn doors and we haven't actually killed a single enemy, we've just driven them back to their spawn. But at the end of the day, you win off of that. Sure, you don't get a kill on the scoreboard, but you know what you do get? You get the point, you get all the angles, and then you get to cramp them in their spawn room doors, and they can't even escape. So I think I have finally woken to the power of Wuyang's ultimate. I feel like I have been misjudging it by looking at its kill power and thinking, I don't know, it's not bad, it's consistent, but I don't know how good it is. It feels kind of like Pulse Bomb. But now that I'm looking at it instead from the perspective of, okay, well, how many angles do you get off of it? How much space do you get off of it? How much playmaking do you enable with it? It's like, I can see it. I can see how it comes together. And you see, this is the thing. I feel like this has helped to fix Wuyang's issues. I mentioned earlier that I feel like almost every single comp that Wuyang helps to enable is a comp that Lucio would just do it better. And I still almost stand by that when it comes to the speed. But the thing is that it's easy to forget that his ultimate grants speed itself. And because it also grants overhealth and it also grants the CC ability, it basically does almost the same thing as amping speed on Lucio does, just on a single target and as an ultimate rather than a long cooldown. So yeah, essentially, when I started to think of Wuyang's ultimate as the equivalent as Lucio's Amp It Up, it started to make a lot more sense. You still have the ability to go for those fast and aggressive pushes that Lucio enables, and you can enable it in almost the exact same way. Just, you have to wait longer for it, but when you get it, it's bigger, it's burstier, and it's easier to do something with it. And to be fair, a lot of the times with Lucio, while it is nice having speed all the time, it's just most important to have the speed in the most critical moments. And oftentimes, it's only one person in your team that desperately needs it. So I'm starting to see how even if Wuyang's ultimate has much less uptime than Lucio's Amp It Up, it can still provide the same benefits that Lucio does, while having his own unique benefits. So yeah, I think that's the meat of my argument, but a few sort of bonus points to throw in there. First of all, I've heard people point out that he's really good for chunking armor, which is something I actually agree with, and I feel like is an under-discussed point. This is actually one of the few smaller, more subtle reasons why Wuyang is good that I actually immediately noticed. A lot of them I didn't, but I did notice this. Again, as a reminder, the way that armor works in its current state in Overwatch is it reduces the damage of everything that hits you by 7 points, only it can't reduce it by more than half of its total amount. So you can't go above 50% damage reduction. You can't shoot someone with something that does 7 damage and the aura turns it to 0. It would turn 7 damage to 3.5 damage. For that reason, big single hits are the best things for breaking armor. As well as that, most characters have somewhere in the ballpark of 100 to 150 armor. You might notice that means that one water balloon from Wuyang already destroys like 2/3 of most characters' armor in one shot. And again, having armor available as a tank before a fight massively impacts how long you're able to sustain through it, because healing armor is more valuable than healing health. Effectively, you are getting healed more in terms of effective HP if you're healing armor rather than healing normal health. So if you have no armor to heal, and instead the supports are only healing your normal health because you lost your armor before the fight even started, you die way, way faster. So, all that being said, does Wuyang need to be nuked into the ground with nerfs? I don't know about that one. Okay, for all the glazing I've done of Wuyang so far in terms of his power level, I want to bring us back down to reality. I still do see a couple glaring concerns with Wuyang that I still don't feel are really fully addressed. For one, I feel like almost all his power as a main support, shot caller, and playmaker is in his ultimate. Now, in fairness, the fact that he's good at farming damage for stats means he's good at farming his ultimate, and that means that he has it more often than most supports do. That being said, it's still a little bit sketchy for most of your playmaking ability to be tied to your ultimate. That still seems like a weak point of Wuyang that could potentially be exploited to me. Now, this second point I'm a little less confident on, because I do feel like whenever you have to resort to this, in fairness, it usually does slow down the pace of your game, and it can be quite risky to go for. That being said, when I look at the way that Wuyang plays, he only gets to destroy dive characters and ruin their dives before they even begin, if they're actually even visible on the screen before they start the dive proper. Which, don't get me wrong, obviously a lot of the times they will be, but it's possible to not be visible on the screen before the dive starts. Honestly, gotta be completely real, this is not even, planned. I mean, this video was unscripted in the first place, but I didn't even think this through, but as I'm talking, I feel like that's kind of explained why Reaper has snuck into the meta. A lot of people have been confused by the fact that Reaper's suddenly been seeing a lot of high-level play in these Overwatch Contender Series maps, especially with Zarya. I mean, it makes sense, he's a Flex DPS, people are running double Flex, but a lot of people feel like it should just be Tracer Genji or, I don't know, Tracer Freya, and not, Tracer Reaper. Because Reaper is a dive character that doesn't go as fast as the other dive characters, but he does go more sneaky. He often tries to make sure that he's attacking you from an angle where you never see him until it's too late. And I feel like that's how you get Wuyang. I still feel like Wuyang is very vulnerable to dives if you get to him and you're already full health by the time you arrive. And again, the only way he can actually get you to low HP before you arrive is if he sees you. If he never sees you and you creep up on him, he kinda can't do anything. He's dead. So, just as equally as people say that, oh, just give it time, bro, we'll learn to get even better at Wuyang and it'll become even more broken, I feel like you can make the same argument from the other angle of, I don't know if people are actually counterplaying Wuyang effectively right now. Give it time and people might learn ways to beat him now. For that reason, I'm still not fully subscribing to Apocalypse Now, Wuyang is broken, but I will fully admit, I put my hands up. I have been moved from I think Wuyang is bad, to I think Wuyang is okay, to I think Wuyang is above average, to, you know what? I admit it. Wuyang's good. Well, I say that. I still think he was genuinely just bad during the playtest. I think the rushing torrent buff did way more than I expected. I was surprised how much different Wuyang felt just with a bit of better burst on the initial movement speed of rushing torrent. I was amazed by how much better that made him feel to play. I was not expecting it to feel that different. So anyway, what about the actual nerfs that were on the screen this whole time? I'm going to be real with you. A lot of people have had mixed feelings on these nerfs. Some people think this is too soon to be nerfing Wuyang. Some people actually think that Wuyang didn't need this nerf. Some people think he desperately needed it and they need to go harder. Some people think Wuyang did need nerfs, but these are the wrong nerfs. I think this could be a fine nerf, you just need to change one thing. Why the hell are we increasing the cooldown of Guardian Wave? Rushing Torrent I get. I didn't like it at first, I looked at it, I was like, ugh. But, in fairness, I think you've got to be careful with escape abilities. And I know that Rushing Torrent can be used for things other than escape, but most of the time you're using it as an escape, as a support. I think if a support has escape ability, you've got to be careful with how frequently they get it. 6 seconds in particular is a dangerous area to have it. That's because characters like Winston have to wait 6 seconds to jump in. Doomfist has to wait 4 seconds with punch, but 7 seconds if he wants his punch and his slam, which he usually does. Someone like Bull has to wait 5 seconds. You get the idea. A lot of dive tanks work on a 6-second clock. And you really want it to be possible to whittle someone away and slowly bleed them of their cooldowns over multiple dives. Otherwise you hit a point where you simply cannot dive the backline, because sure, you can force cooldowns out of them, but by the time you get out of the fight and then get back in, they've already got all their cooldowns back and you haven't actually achieved anything. You need to be in a position where if you're constantly threatening the enemy backline and they're constantly having to use cooldowns to stay alive, it needs to actually slowly drain them. You can't hit a point where the enemies can just infinitely sustain cooldowns and trade them evenly with your cooldowns, even if you're using them well. You have to have an ability for dive to slowly bleed people out of their cooldowns that they're going to use to escape and defend themselves. So I do think that rushing Torrent going to 8 seconds is pretty reasonable. 7 is playing it risky. Like, don't get me wrong, obviously 7 is still larger than 6, so, like, you know, there's still a window, but that does mean it is really hard to bleed the Wuyang of his cooldowns that way. The heal wave amplification duration being reduced is actually fine by me too. 4 seconds was a really long time, and the heal amp has been stronger than some people give it credit for. It is really powerful. It allows you to get a lot of heals off, and it does feel pretty frustrating to play against in some situations, so it definitely should be shortened. It's just that last nerf. Guardian Wave is already a monumentally weak ability for the cooldown. Now, I'm being a bit harsh. It's better than you think. Like, don't get me wrong, the damage numbers are low, the self-heal numbers are low, the heal lamp is the most useful thing, but of course it's limited in its range, and it takes a while to reach its target. But in fairness, while the damage and healing is low, the healing is on demand, and the damage is practically undodgeable and doesn't really require much aim. So when you're being dove, it's pretty convenient to have. Sometimes it even puts people in range for a single orb to kill them, and if it does, that's a big deal. But for the most part, in general, just in terms of pure stats and what it's used for, Guardian Wave is not that strong of an ability. It is actually pretty weak, like, at least relative to how long the cooldown is. Usually something of this strength would be on something like an 8-second cooldown, not 12. Now, in fairness, I'm not complaining about the fact it's a 12-second cooldown. I think having too high an uptime on heal amp would be very frustrating to play against, and I also think that obviously a lot of Wuyang's power is in his primary fire, not his abilities, so it makes sense for his abilities to be a little underwhelming. That being said, I think we're pushing it now with Guardian Wave. Like, okay, on what planet do we think it's okay that Guardian Wave effectively has a longer cooldown than Suzu? And before you say, no it doesn't, Suzu's cooldown is 15 seconds, remember that the new perk that everyone picks on Kiriko right now allows you to get cooldown reduction when you Suzu someone and it works on yourself. Meaning in actuality, your Suzu is actually, what was it, 11-second cooldown, 10-second cooldown? It was something like that, I don't remember off the top of my head. Basically, you can get Suzu more frequently than Nade right now, which is already a travesty in its own right. I don't really want to live in the world where you get Suzu more frequently than you get Guardian Wave. Like, is Guardian Wave really anywhere near as strong as Anti-Nade? Why do they have the same cooldown? Nade is clearly a way more powerful ability, as is Sleep Dart. The reason I'm complaining about this so much is the same reason that some people claim that they like Wuyang nerfs, they just think these are the wrong ones. A lot of people are saying, and to be fair, rightly so, that his power comes from his primary fire, and it doesn't make sense to nerf his cooldowns. It not only makes Wuyang less fun to play, like there's more time just sitting there, flinging orbs, waiting for cooldowns to be up so you can do things again, but it doesn't even fix the actual problem. And to be fair, I kind of agree. Like I said earlier, I think the actual thing that makes Wuyang strong, now that I've finally come around to it, is one, that his ultimate makes a ton of space and there's almost no way to stop it, and two, that his primary fire, while it's small, constantly delays the enemy team's advance, and does it with literally zero cost in terms of resources to you or your teammates. The trouble is, I must admit, it's a little bit hard to see how to fix this. I personally like the idea of reducing the overhealth on his ultimate, or I've heard the idea of splitting the health that you get 50-50 between healing and overhealth on cast, and removing the burst of healing at the end of the ultimate. Thank you, Lane Hemingway. Those are all ideas I'm up for. I don't really want to remove the speed boost, even though it is scary. Maybe you could reduce it a bit, but ultimately I like it. I think it's fun. I think it enables playmaking. I just think we need to be a little bit careful about how it's used. But his primary fire is a tough one. There's the obvious thing of you could nerf the damage, but I think you have to be careful how you nerf it. If you nerf it too low, eventually it just hits a point when no one really cares about hitting shots on Wuyang, and that would be pretty detrimental when that's basically his whole character. I've heard people throw around 90 as a number to nerf him to, and that seems reasonable. Oh yeah, and while I'm here, yes, I'm embarrassed. I did say that they should increase the damage of his orbs to 120, like, without the perk. You know, I did say that, and obviously I will look back and say, yeah, I was real wrong. At the time I was thinking, well, it seems the only way they can make Wuyang work with his current kit is to make it so he can actually kill people who dive him consistently. So I thought, well, he's going to need more damage to kill people diving him. But obviously, once we got the mobility on Rushing Torrent to be able to survive a dive without the damage boosts, yeah, the damage boost would have been massive overkill. That would have been a terrible change. I'll put my hands up and own up to that. Just thought I'd bring that up while we were on this topic. Either way, yeah, reducing it down to 90 would be reasonable. And on one hand, I completely get that change, because obviously the range that he has right now can be really oppressive to deal with certain flankers. But on the other hand, I kind of don't like it, because it's kind of punishing people for being good at Wuyang. If you land some stupid long shot, you want to feel like you're being rewarded for that, not that you're being punished for landing a more difficult shot. I already kind of don't like how strict Cassidy's damage fall-off is. I feel like I prefer a version of Cassidy that can shoot further away, even if it means he has to sacrifice other aspects of his kit. So while I understand the spirit behind that idea, I'm not so sure. If anything, I might prefer the opposite. I understand that this is a little bit sketchy, makes the character a bit spiky and a bit scary, but I kind of like the idea of having it so that there is a pretty noticeable, like, very quick ramp-up of damage the longer you control the orb. What I mean by that is, I feel like once you get a few steps away from your face, it shouldn't really move much. You know, you still get more damage the further it gets, but you don't get a lot more. But there should be this, like, close-range area where, like, for the first few meters of the orb traveling, if it hits the target almost immediately, it shouldn't be fully charged and deal the full 100 damage. It should, like, do less. It should, like, ramp up to the 100 damage over a longer period of time. And it wouldn't be like that it's max damage the second you're steering it. It'd be max damage a couple seconds after you start steering it. I feel like that might be a good way to do it. Because while it would keep all the kill power and the reward for going for those crazy skill shots on Wuyang, it would also make it terrifying to have to deal with flankers up close, because of the fact that even if you hit your orbs, you're not going to be doing as much damage as you would be from a distance. That being said, you still can hit orbs on people before they even engage, so you still can fight off the flankers. Not to mention, we're talking about a version of Wuyang that wouldn't have the 14-second nerf on the Guardian Wave, so you'd have the wave up a little bit more often. As a side note, I really don't like increasing the cooldown of Wave, not only because I think it's not even that strong, and it's not really the problem, but on top of that, Wave is literally the only ability that Wuyang has besides his ultimate that makes him sort of main supporty. The fact that obviously it can be used to protect people with the heal amp, and the fact that it can knock back enemies is really important. Already, the other competition, Lucio and Brigitte, get to boot people away every 4 seconds with whip shot and sound, not sound barrier, that's the ultimate. Wait, what is boop called? Wait, actually, I don't, Sonic Disruptor? Yeah, I think it is, because Sonic amplifies the primary fire. Genuinely had a moment of, wait, I don't know what boop is called. I've called it boop my whole life. What is boop called? I think it's Sonic Disruptor. Anyway, yeah. Basically, those cooldowns are both 4-second cooldowns with significant knockbacks. You can use them literally 3 times as often as Wuyang can, and in Brigitte's case, you can use it from a further distance, and on top of that, the knockback of both of them are stronger than Wuyang's wave. So, like, considering the only thing that makes Wuyang good at being a protector and a main support is his Guardian Wave, and already, for a cooldown that takes 3 times as long as the competition and does a less effective job, man, we really do not need to be increasing the cooldown of this ability. That's just a terrible idea. In fairness, I suppose he does have his Heal Beam, and his Heal Beam, it's not really protection in the way that main supports usually provide it, but it is sort of protection. I don't know, I don't want to count this as a main support thing, because if you do, you start inviting the argument that Alari is a main support because her heal beam is protection. I'm not sure about that argument. Oh yeah, and there's one other side tangent. I wouldn't mind if they nerf Wuyang's healing a bit. In fairness, I do think that is one of the few niches he has, is that he's the only main support that can consistently get high healing numbers. Brig can get very high healing numbers, but it's spiky. You need to be in the right situations with the right kind of teams. So while I do think Brig's healing output is often underrated, I'm also not going to pretend that having a high healing output on Brig is always like a skill thing. Sometimes you are a good Brig, but you're just in a matchup or in a team comp or just in a situation where even if you're playing good Brig, you can't get a lot of heals done. Whereas Wuyang can almost always get a lot of heals done somewhere. I suppose that is something he has, and that's another way he can farm his ult even faster. That being said, maybe they've leaned into it a bit too much. So, yeah, in summary, I think that if you really want to nerf Wuyang, where he's actually a little too strong, you need to nerf his ult a little bit. Not a lot, but maybe a little bit would be a good idea. We would need to reduce the damage of his primary fire, but again, probably only a teeny bit, just a tiny bit, not a lot. Maybe, you know, you can get a bit more creative with, do we add damage fall off? Do we add reverse damage fall off? Do we add this mechanic or that mechanic? I'm fine with the rushing torrent going up to 8 seconds, but don't make it any higher. I don't want to see 9-second rushing torrent. That would be stupid. And maybe let's take a look at knocking down that healing just a teeny bit. With all that said, though, I'm not even sure how long Wuyang's going to stay on top. This buff to Brig is a pretty big one, and again, the second that anyone that you actually want to play with Brig is going to become viable again, I personally think Brig is well positioned to sort of take over as the main support to beat. I could be crazy, but here's just what I'm thinking. There's been a few people talking about how maybe we've been a bit too hasty to move to double Flex DPS, which as much as I love double Flex DPS, I kind of agree. It's like the second that Cassidy and Sojourn get a 25 HP nerf, suddenly we throw out the whole role of main DPS and say, no point. In fairness, some teams have been running Cassidy still, but I don't even think that's the strat. I don't think Cassidy is it anymore. And, I mean, I think there's a chance that Sojourn could beat it, but I don't know. She'd probably get eaten alive by most dive comps considering how aggressive they are right now. So, here's a character that, when they first came out, I felt like everyone overreacted to and overblew how strong they were, only for me to now be the guy telling you you're probably underrating her. Freya. Yeah, when Freya came out, I felt like she was overhyped. Not weak, she was strong, yes, but I feel like she was overhyped. I still stand by that, personally. She got a light slap on the wrist as a nerf, and suddenly everyone acted like she was unplayable. And ever since, Freya, I mean, she's not disappeared, she still shows up, but she doesn't really seem to be discussed much. I'm gonna be real with you, though. I think Freya is the main DPS team should be running. Now, in fairness, this is not all that revolutionary, because I've waited too long to give this take, and now we are seeing a decent amount of Freya Tracer. But I do think that Freya Tracer in most situations is probably the optimal DPS duo to run. That is because I think that Freya has the ability to survive dives without taking resources. You see, the thing of Cass is that Cass wants to stand and fight to deal with a dive, and that has upsides and downsides. It's more rewarding to survive a dive as Cass because you win by actually killing the threats and removing them from the play. That's a big deal. But you're being greedy. If you mess up, if you do die, you, well, die way more consistently. It is a lot harder to stay alive on Cass and survive a dive than it is to play Freya, play on high ground, force the dive characters to have to use cooldowns just to reach you, and then you just hit your updraft and camp in the skybox where they can't reach you. Now sure, you don't actually deal with the dive threat usually, you avoid them, but you don't usually just kill them for that. But even if you rarely get a kill off of that, you're not dead. And it's way easier to be not dead versus dive on Freya by just using your movement to evade being dove, rather than standing and fighting on Cass. I'm basically bringing this up because I think the main thing that's kind of knocked Cass out of the picture is not just that he lost 25 health. I think that's part of the picture. But I feel like usually losing 25 health wouldn't have this pronounced of an effect. I think the reason it has had this pronounced of an effect is because that if you are playing dive into a Cass, your number one priority is take out the Cass first. And the thing with Cass is he's really good at stopping one person diving in. It gets a bit tough if two people are diving you. If you get any more than two, you're just dead. Like, I don't care how good you are at Cass. If you get jumped by 3 people simultaneously, if you just, like, surprise, hey, there's a Sombra Tracer ball on you, like, good luck. You know, I don't think you can deal with that on Cass. You could throw your flash and maybe catch one of those 3 threats, and then you're dead. The other 2 will kill you. Whereas if you're Freya, you just go to the skybox. Now, in fairness, there is one problem with this theory, but I don't think it's a big enough one to really ruin her chances. That being that I do think that Wrecking Ball is one of the better tanks in the game versus Freya. I obviously don't think he's like a hard counter to Freya, but I feel like if you're going to play a tank versus Freya, you probably want to play Wrecking Ball. That obviously does put Freya in a bit more of an awkward position, but like I say, it's not unwinnable for the Freya, and I think the Freya's in a much better position to deal with everyone else in the lobby. Why am I bringing all this up? Well, if you are going to be running a comp that runs Tracer and Ball and Freya, you probably want Anna Brig. Like, if you're imagining a Tracer Freya Ball comp, first of all, do you want Lucio in that? Probably not. But more importantly, do you want Wuyang in that? I mean, maybe you can think of some versions of that comp where Wuyang would be a good pick, but I'm not sure. I feel like using a Brig to bodyguard the Anna is going to get a lot more done than using a Wuyang Kiri to just sort of spread damage generally around the place. That's actually another point as well. One reason that Wuyang might be doing so well is also that I get the impression he is much better versus Flex DPS than Main DPS. I personally think that Main DPS are often going to beat him in a lot of sightlines. There's a lot of times where Wuyang is getting away with murder, just being able to fling damage wherever he wants, because he literally just sits down main and just starts flinging bubbles. And I feel like if there was, you know, an Ashe, or a Cass, or a Soldier even, or a Sojourn, or a Freya in the lobby, what would happen to that Wuyang who decides to just sit down mid and fling balls and ruin everyone's day is they would get their head blown off in 2 seconds flat from someone who can shoot them with way more damage, way faster, from a much further distance. But of course, because main DPS aren't really seeing a lot of play right now and it's mostly double flex going on, there's nothing really there to stop the Wuyang from doing what he wants to. So there's also a possibility that for as strong as Wuyang is in the context of the current meta, it's not going to last. I do feel like if you take Wuyang and put him in a meta with a lot more hit scans, I feel like he would start to feel a little bit tougher to run. With all that said, that's my take on the patch. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.